Hello, everyone. So the North American Online League, the first season officially ended, I believe. Last Tuesday was my last game, and I wanted to quickly go over all five games and talk about how they went and where I think I am going to be focusing some of my study, just so you can sort of see how I'm going to be putting the knowledge I got from these games to use in my own study, I guess. I got to play a nice variety of very strong players with Benkyo here. I also got to play Padge Edict, which you guys might know, James Sedgwick, GoTrevor from I think he's well known for being one of the strong players in AYD, and then Neurotoxin here, which I've seen his name a few times around, but it seems that they're all around, I would say, 6 to 8 Dawn on Fox, you could say. So it was kind of fun to be able to play all these more serious games. However, one of the problems I had this time was that I decided to stream all of these games, which was not a good choice. I think if I wasn't streaming, I would have changed at least two of the games for sure. Like this first one versus Ben, I ended up using way more time than I needed to use. And then my game versus James at Sedgwick here, I ended up doing something just because I just thought it'd be fun. So in the next season, season two, I'm definitely going to be focusing more on just playing them seriously off stream because I want to try to use these games as a way to try to get better. I'm going to start off with my game versus Ben. Now, this was sort of an interesting game. I'm going to focus a little bit on the opening because I played this opening a few times. So I am white in this game, and I play just the star point and 3/4 point. My normal opening as white is the opposing 3/4 points, which allows for a little bit more of a territorial or complicated fighting game, depending on what my opponent wants to play. And I want to try to simplify my opening as white for this so I can focus on some other aspects of the game. So instead, I decided to prevent any sort of cross opening from being able to happen and just do a 3/4 and a 4/4 because I think that's one of the more balanced ways to play. Then Ben ends up deciding to play this enclosure, which is actually an opening that I kind of like as black. However, I think this enclosure is bad here versus playing the enclosure here. Now, I say that because I have a stone at a D17. This makes it hard for black to do any sort of follow-up on the top. But overall, I think this was fine. He decided to play a sort of a territorial way here and do this approach, which is one of the things I like about this enclosure. However, I think the upper left corner was a little bit bigger, so I got to play there first. And this is where we reach the first point that I need to sort of study. I open up a little notepad here that I can write stuff or type stuff down on. And here, Ben plays this attachment right away. Now, my original response a long time ago was just to either back off here or extend here. Take the territory directly or take the outside influence because this is the most simple way to play. But I have been trying to do the Hanes instead, which are a lot more complicated. And one of the ones that I've learned and have been liking is this Hane underneath. However, something I should study is actually the Hane on top. Black is likely to be able to get some sort of outside position here and make my corner a little bit more small. Well, not outside position, but take a territorial position here, right? But this influence here seems to be fairly useful on this board because I have some influence on the bottom right, and this is sort of counteracting what black has. This would actually simplify the game quite nicely, but I'm not very confident in all the variations that could happen here. This might be the only way to play. I don't know. I need to study it. That's one of the things I needed to study was study the one space jump enclosure attachment joseki. All right, so that's one joseki that I feel like I need to learn a little bit more about. Because even in the way that I played in the game, which was the Hane underneath, this allows for sort of a fighting variation to happen, no matter where black plays. So if black plays this one, then you can cut and extend here. Black cuts here, and we have a sort of an interesting little situation where with all these cutting points, black's going to be able to get something out of this position, and it's sort of up to white to choose the idea that black gets to take here. And so I chose incorrectly here with this move, and that I'm taking sort of the corner, but I'm able to give black the outside influence, which is useful for his position. Whereas I should have played this connection. Yeah, it's a small detail, right? But at this rank, it sort of matters. If I play this connection, it's harder for him to just give up this stone because there's no sort of follow up on the top. And he just sort of gets a little tiny bit of strength in the center in exchange for giving me everything on the side and the corner. So that seems a little bit too good for white here. So in this case, black would have to get this move, which is Sente, and then fight here in the center. But this should also be good for me here because me creating a potentially strong group in the center is going to also prevent black from being able to use any sort of influence here. And the center is very important. That's something I needed to study as well. Center strength, something to focus on in my games, is center strength. So instead I give black the center strength and allow him to get a position on the top here. I do another Joseki. This is fine for the most part, but this move was really bad. During the stream, I talked about playing here, and this is actually the move that I believe AI suggested. It's a little bit difficult for black to actually handle this because this group is potentially weak. So if black plays low here to prevent me from getting a base, I can attach on top, and sort of no matter what black plays, me jumping out here is going to eventually attack this left side group. So it's important for black to handle this very carefully, and it seems a little bit difficult to handle in a way where I can't get some sort of decent result from it. But I thought that in the game, maybe I needed to try something a little bit more because I know that Ben is supposed to be a lot stronger than me, right? At least one or two ranks stronger than me. So I want to try to push it a little bit more and try to do something that I would never do, which is this diagonal here, trying to do some sort of attack. And if the attack bleeds out into the center, I should be able to reduce the top side. But this is a little bit optimistic, you could say. After black pushes me towards the center, if he just takes this top side in any way, I just don't have enough points in this game, and I have a weak group. So this was not very good. However, black tried to surround instead, which allowed me to get on the top, and then he played a bad direction here, which allowed me to make a very easy life here, which also somewhat threatens his group. And so this ends up being a position in which I think is actually quite good for white. I think at this point I'm a little bit ahead. And the next sort of point that I needed to focus on here was that because I actually got ahead here, I don't really need to try to get a lot of extra points and squeeze out every little bit of potential out of the game. What I should actually be doing is protecting myself. If I do something like this and protect my group here, this gets me a couple of extra points. I could even try to do, something a little bit different, like try to gain as many extra points as I can. However, I felt like this group is fine. I probably can't get too many points with this group, so I should focus on getting more points. So I played here. But because this group was weak, in the end game, black was able to get like 10 to 15 extra points in the center area, which made it very difficult for me. I didn't really need to worry as much as I did because after black ends up playing here later on, I remember this move, so it's easy to find. I can't really make any points here, and I just need to try to live now. But you can see that it doesn't look like there should be anything in the center area. However, later on, after black is able to attack this group, and he plays this move here later on in the end game, you can see that I have to still protect myself. And after he plays here, he actually ended up making like 10 points throughout this little tiny area. And the game was about a 7.5 game. So if I had actually just defended myself, instead making those 5 to 10 points, just defending this group, even if he gets a couple extra points on the bottom, I'm probably going to get some points on the left side. And that would have made it actually a win for me by around the same amount that I lost by the 7.5. I also played a couple bad end game moves here. And if I'd played proper end game, well, the proper big moves in endgame. I didn't miss them. It would have been maybe like a 3.5 game instead. So that's one more thing I can write down here is end game for this first one. So the next game, we don't have to spend as much time because I already got some of the opening done here. The next game was versus Padge Edict. My impression of Padge was that she's stronger than Ben, and so I kind of went into this game thinking that I was probably going to lose. However, that was a mistake. I think I had some decent opportunities here, but I sort of played poorly. So look at the opening again. Because there is this D17 stone, I am black here, of course. Because there's this D17 stone, I decide to enclose instead of doing some sort of enclose in the bottom right instead of doing the enclosure like what Ben did in his game. And I also decide to approach the upper left instead of responding to the approach that Padge played. I wanted to practice a little bit of double approach, Joseki stuff. However, I sort of messed that up. So I'm going to write down that I need to study double approach Joseki. So Padge ends up playing simple. I like to just back off as well, and then they get to this double approach. One thing I did learn, it was from some of Ryan Lee's videos, was that you want to attach on the side where you're fine blocking, right? So if I attach here and white decides to take the 3-3, you can block here, right? And this potentially grows this side. So I'd be pretty happy with this. Whereas if I block on the other side and they take the 3-3, I don't really want to block this way as much. It seems much harder to use this position. That was the sort of simplest way to do it. And the other thing to look out for is the ladder here. If they attach underneath, there is this cut leading into a ladder to the bottom left corner. So whichever side, again, it's the same sort of position where you get some strength facing one side or the other. And so you want to attach on the side where you want that strength facing. There is no ladder in this case, but that's the other thing to look out for, what I learned. So I attach here, and it seems to be that AI agrees with this sort of assessment of how to attach. So, but Padge tries to go a little bit further here. Because I want to deal with this upper right area, I decide to play very simple in this corner. Because if I do something that's too much, it felt like it might bleed into the area and become easy to handle. Easy for white to handle. However, again, I probably should do the Hane on top here. And if we just get this same sort of situation as before, I believe I can even just give up the corner in this case and take this outside influence. And this actually seems fairly useful for me. Now, I don't know the variations here, so this is, again, I need to study this. But if I take this, like just looking at the influence here, this actually seems quite useful for this game. For me personally, I can see how useful this is. So this is probably what I should have done. But instead, I just play down here. This is just to simplify the position. I think that's also still fine. And then Padge ends up playing a move that I think is just not good right now. This is not really a good move. The upper right is very important. You could consider this move here as a testing move to see how I respond in this corner. And then white should have just come back to the top. I'm not exactly sure the best way, or the best Joseki here, but just something here, right? And I have to continue on. But they played on the left side, which is not very important right now. And so I should have played on the top, but I did not. And that's where, like, I even discussed it sort of in the stream that I should probably play on the top. I just didn't know how to handle it, so I just didn't. I ended up playing the corner instead. And then we get to resume the Joseki here. Turns into a little bit of a fight. But then again, I have another good opportunity here. So actually, I've come into quite a few opportunities here to sort of get very far ahead in this game. You know, attacking this upper side or playing the Joseki here on the bottom where I hane over the top. That would have been a much better choice, right? And here again, I have the same possibility because Padge attached here, which was not very good. There's a very bad shape here, which if black just extends, they're able to connect up to the corner, or cut through this position. If I cut through this position, these stones are likely dead. So I'm able to Hane first, because if white connects, this isn't really very good. It's hard to live with this group in this case. So it has to come out. I'm able to get this move, and I should have just connected, right? This is actually involving the strength and weakness of groups. If I just connect here on the top, my corner has no issues, and this white group needs to try to survive. While it's trying to survive, I'm likely able to secure this group, and then my group on the left side should never end up becoming weak. This really, really, really is important. If I do this, I'm probably actually on track to win this game very, very easily. Maybe not easily, but I'm on track to win this game for sure. But instead, I put on the outside because I thought that I have this as a backup plan. But when white blocks here, I do kind of have to live in the corner. And so that really changes the strength and weakness group dynamic, which makes it difficult for me to win. So there ends up being a lot of fighting. And because I just have to protect everywhere, the game becomes a little bit too difficult for me to handle. And I kind of just have to resign at some point here. The point balance wasn't too bad for a while, but when you have so much weakness, your opponent's able to solidify points in a nice way. And I end up having a little bit of a hard time on the top because I couldn't read out how to live, though there was a way to live. So I could do a little bit more life and death, but this is the only game where I sort of had that big of an issue with it. So I had some opportunities in this game. I had a negative outlook on if I could even win this game, but if I was in the proper mindset and able to focus better, I think I could have actually won this game in a nice way. So I'm actually fairly happy with this one. Next game, let's keep moving. So this game, I got to play James at Sedgwick. This is the game where I was distracted by the stream. Not necessarily distracted by the people talking in the stream, but just I decided to play a way that I shouldn't have played because I thought it'd be more fun when I wanted to try to take these games more seriously than that. This game, I am black again. And so I play the similar opening, but instead of doing the enclosure, which I think I might prefer a little bit more overall, I decided to approach. I think both moves are perfectly acceptable, which is one reason why I like this opening. You can play differently depending on how you're feeling on that day. You don't have to be too strict or rigid with how you decide to play. He decides to kick and jump. I just make a base, and he gets to approach me. And I don't like to do the kick as much. I like to focus more on the outside influence lately. So just the Kosumi here, and I take his corner. Now, I think I prefer approaching a little bit more than the corner, but I don't think it's too big of a deal. Because he ends up giving me this really nice Panuki on the outside, which actually is sort of what I really wanted anyway, which is why I think I should have just approached. But here's my first sort of mistake is I play this move, which I think is actually usually a good move, but it's a bit too slow this early on in the game. I should probably just enclose this corner. After I do that, I think the balance of the opening is quite nice. And I think I prefer it overall for black. So this was a bit too slow, but probably not going to lose me the game. So white is able to take my corner. I could potentially block in a better way, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. The problem here ends up being that I play just a couple bad moves, right? This one here doesn't really make too much sense. It allows white to clamp here, which makes this group a lot easier to live with. If I just connect, because that's what I was focusing on, then this group has a much harder time living. White just takes more territory and sort of, yeah, this is just a really good follow-up for white to play almost always. And so I tried to attack the group a little bit here, and while also growing the bottom side. I don't know if it's actually very common anymore, but this kick and push here is sort of a potentially good way to attack this group often. He defends a little bit. I get to jump here, and this is sort of pointing at this weakness here. Let me see, where is that? got something in the way. This weakness here at S7. When white jumps out here, because I'm actually threatening white, I should just play this right away. White can't really block from this side because I get to just connect up, and that would be way too good for me. I'm just winning this game now. So he has to play here. I'm able to push now on this side, and if they block here, I can cut off the center, and this would be very good for me. And if they protect the center, I can connect up on the side, getting a lot of points, getting rid of their strength there, and potentially just taking the bottom side for myself while they have to defend this group here. Maybe it would be good for me to make an exchange like this first, so that they can't just capture the stone and live very easily. And this would have been a very, very simple way for me to play. I'm not necessarily sure that I'm very far ahead, but I think this is still an even game, I guess. I just have a lot more opportunity to attack and build points. Whereas in the game, what I end up doing, let me see if we go back here, I end up attacking from the center instead because I just wasn't sure where to play. I was having a little bit of a hard time. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to attack and see what happens. See if I can get something in the center. And it's often better not to just throw a stone down and just figure it out later. He even just tanukis that because he's like, no, that's not good enough. So again, I should just go back and attack him with this sort of thing. And now I have a little bit of support on the outside. But I wasn't sure how to figure this area out. So what I decided to do was make white as heavy as possible. I'm making white heavy by playing very close to them. This is often not a good idea. But in doing this, white becomes a bit more of a stick. And I can come out here and try to attack this group. If I can attack it well enough, I can push it towards the other group and maybe kill one or the other. This is super aggressive and not a way I should be playing in this case. It makes it very difficult. I try to fight, and then this move again comes back to haunt me a little bit because I didn't connect solidly. White's able to basically just live with this attachment. It just becomes a game of me trying to attack this stick of stones here. And in the stream, I end up saying, you know what, let's just try to kill it. Instead of trying to make points or trying to do something else, I just go straight for the kill. I had the opportunity to change my mind here when white cuts, because I'm just surrounding them. And when white cuts here, what I probably should do to try to make points and win the game is just back off. If white plays here, I can maybe just connect. Maybe white will answer, maybe white won't, but if they answer, they're probably just alive. And now I have the opportunity to potentially just make some points on this side. And then the point balance is not really that far off, and I can maybe even win. But I decided, you know what, let's just see if we can kill the group. Let's have fun. I think I actually said exactly that in the stream. So I played this move, which is a very, very severe sort of attacking move, but it's difficult to really handle because I don't really have enough strength on the outside. So it just becomes a lot of reading, a lot of fighting here. We both make a couple mistakes, but overall, if you look at the board here, I have these knight's moves, which are easy to cut through. I have these 3 stones that don't have a lot of liberties, which is why he extends here. And I have all of these cutting points on the outside. While I did read them all, it seems like I'm going to be fine. I still also have so much to worry about, right? So it's too difficult to do this sort of fight. And then he is able to just play very simple moves, cut me off, and then peep here, cutting up, which cuts off these 2 stones, which lets him live. And there's not really anything I can do about it. So this was the game where I was a little bit disappointed. And if I had not been streaming, I would have played very, very differently. Looks like Waller Dog is streaming on Twitch. Definitely go check him out, I guess. Let me close that. So this one, I would say there's not as much to learn from. I just was playing super aggressive. So just 2 more games to go. Let's see if we can get through this. This one is against GoTrevor. I think I said earlier, GoTrevor is one of the stronger players that's in the American Youngusang Dojang, the AYD. So I am white in this game. So I'm playing the 4-4 and 3-4 again. And I decided to just play a sort of a normal opening here, which is this sort of position. I'm not sure how I feel about this. I think I might like something slightly different, but I think this is okay overall. Black gets to approach, and I actually made a really good decision here of enclosing this bottom left corner. This was actually the right choice, but I did it slightly wrong. In this case, what I wanted to prevent, because I think Black should have approached on this bottom side here. This feels like the sort of important area, because Black can develop it. So it feels quite nice to at least get one approach here, and then he could go back. Oh, the pop-up window got in the way. Then he could go back and approach if he wanted to, or he could follow up in some way, however he wants. So when he approaches in the upper left, even though that is quite large, it feels like this bottom side is very important. So I enclose here instead, which sort of goes back to my opposing 3-4 opening that I like to play. This is a similar idea. I made a video about it a long time ago as well. And if he presses me down, then it's hard for him to use this wall because I have this enclosure. That was sort of the thought here. But my goal was to prevent him from approaching on the bottom and to, sort of control the bottom side. So instead of enclosing the left side, what I should have done was enclose the bottom side. Just an interesting thing to see. Not something to worry about too much, but I guess the idea was I should just play what I wanted instead of trying to be a bit more fancy, you could say. But I think the game was mostly okay for me. And this was sort of the other time where I set the pace for how I was playing this game here. What I should be doing right now is actually attacking these 3 stones because when he shoulder hits here, I can pincer. If he blocks, it sort of turns into a position where Black has potentially 2 weak groups and White only has 1. So this should actually be a fairly good game for me. But instead, I wanted to play. I decided I wanted to play very solid. So I wanted to push up here, and if he responded, I was going to play this move, which is what I played in the game. And it's just way too slow, and it's not really solid. It's just slow at this point in the game. It would be solid if it was later on in the middle game. But he ends up taking the bottom side, and after defending the corner, instead of playing on the bottom myself, I just need to again focus on potentially attacking or making this upper left group a little bit weaker. If I can do that, I can control the flow of the game a lot better. But instead, I decided to play on the bottom, trying to attack him on this side instead and prevent him from getting points. Maybe a little bit of like a greedy move. It actually worked out fairly well for me, but I fought in the wrong way, just very slightly. So when I jump here and he attacks from the center, I try to cut through him like this, which is actually the right idea, but I missed that I could have played this peep because for some reason I thought this was Sente, so I can't cut. But no, this I can still cut through here. So I hallucinated a little bit with this one. But if I play this peep, then this attachment is very different. So in the game, what happens is I attach here. He has to attack from this side, and I can cut on this side to try to help my group. And he's able to Atari and sort of restrict my liberties in a really nice way. But if I play from the other direction, if I am able to block this one, I'm able to cut on the other side, which completely changes the dynamic of this fight because of the weakness of this stick of stones and the liberties associated here with this potential group after he connects, right? This is a much better way for me to cut. And it's funny when I looked at the AI, if I cut this way, the game is really good for me. But when I cut the other way, without this exchange, the game is really bad for me. Which it didn't feel like it was that bad for me. You do get that feeling when you see them both side by side, in my opinion. If we look at this cut versus this cut, it's a lot more obvious. So I make some bad exchanges, but overall I felt like this should be fine because it looks like I have a lot of white stones. He just has these 2 black stones. I'm probably going to get a lot of territory here. This seemed good. But no, it's actually very easy for Black to manage the situation. We both play some mistakes, but I ended up being a little bit too aggressive here. Again, another game where I'm a little bit too aggressive. What I should be playing is defending my weak group, even if he can live. If I can defend this weak group, he's not able to make a lot of points on the left side. But instead, I tried to very severely attack. This felt like a vital point, right? Like I can potentially cut through this position and kill these stones off. But it was a little bit too much. He didn't quite attack me the right way, but I needed to defend myself instead. Because as you can see, I'm kind of surrounded, right? It's a little bit difficult to handle. So it seems like I'm able to surround him really well, but it turns into a big capturing race. And I end up barely winning the capturing race. But because it was a race, you can see here that he's able to get this basically surrounded now. And he's gotten a lot of territory in this upper side. Then he's also gotten this H18 move, which makes this corner very, very weak. I had to give up and sacrifice quite a lot in order to even get this capture race. I think I actually misread the capturing race, but I ended up with the slightly better position, so I can win. I mess up in a couple different areas here. So when he tanukis, now I should give up this group because I can't really save it anyway and just play the big move on the left side. If I just start playing big end game, I should be able to win, assuming that I do have this capture race figured out, and I think I do actually win now. Let me double check. Okay, I double checked. I have to cut that part out. There's just a lot of looking at it, but actually, I believe he is actually one move ahead. That's what it is. He's one move ahead, and him playing away is what gave me the opportunity to kill this group. Couldn't quite remember. It's hard to read out these capture races very quickly for me. I still need to practice that. I still need to practice capture race. Yeah, so he should have been able to kill this, but he ended up playing the capture race incorrectly. Yeah, he ended up taking a liberty from a side that didn't really matter, which means that I was able to take a liberty from the side that mattered here. And this changed the dynamic of the capturing race, allowing me to win. But my group is dead here now, and me extending here gives me enough liberties to be 100% certain that I'm alive and I can kill him. But he's able to get this big end game move. Now, if I just play really good end game from now on, I actually can win this game fairly easily. But I didn't do a good job with my end game. So that's another point I need to write down. Another point of end game 2. There we go. There's 2 points of end game wrote down there. Yeah, 2 games where I probably could have won if I played slightly better end game, or if I understood strength and weakness of groups just very slightly more. So it's good to focus on in my next games. So we end up going all the way to the end here, and as I said, if I played correctly, I should be ahead by a couple points, but instead I played some bad end game, and he ends up winning. So I go back to the game. He ends up winning by 3.5 points. It was very, very close. Ooh, very close. There's only one last game to look at, and this is the game versus Neurotoxin. Because I was not happy with the way I played in the rest of my games, I decided to try to play in a completely different style for this game. Depending on what he played, of course, but maybe do like a focusing on my territory and building my points. So I am white again. I think I got white 3 times out of 5. So good, bad, I don't know. But he decided to play double 4-4, and I went back to my opposing 3-4 opening. But I end up with a fairly good result here because he plays this hanging connection, which allows me to tanuki. Oh man, that was loud. I hope you guys didn't hear that. Yep, allows me to tanuki here and play the enclosure, which is really nice for me. You can tanuki this hanging connection because any sort of follow-up over here is not really that severe. If he attaches here, which he did in the game, you can bump and do this hane and connect for the simplest way to play while leaving a lot of weakness on the board. As you can tell, if white extends here, black needs to protect on this side, which means that a move on the left side of the board is actually threatening the life of these 4 stones. And if black decides to do this knight's move instead, you can still attach and cut here and play underneath, which is leaving a similar amount of weakness in the center. Now, I like doing this, but it also would have been simple just to hane underneath. That would have been fine too. After this, I approach on the top because of that weakness, and I play basic joseki here. This slide is good to help with invading on the top, because if you make this hane and connect exchange, It's very, very difficult to do anything on the top now because black is much, much stronger. I wanted to leave the top side a little bit more open, so I did this one. And he plays a little bit of an overplay right away, which gives me a fairly large advantage in this game from the beginning. And what I should be doing, potentially, is just pushing and cutting right now. Any sort of fight in the center in this case is going to be very, very good for me. Compared to the Benkyo game, where it made me weak on two sides, this is just black having to deal with this position. So if black extends, I can Atari, and let's just say we play like this, just to keep it simple. You can see that this strength in the center is going to make it so that he can't really build a lot on the top. And he still has to worry a little bit about the right side. And he can't even really do anything to my corner here, which is what makes this difficult for black to manage. But instead I decide to do the shoulder hit here, which is not necessarily that big of a deal. Probably still perfectly fine to play. The mistake that I sort of made, though, is that what I should do is just play to prevent him from getting any points on the top. If I have this sort of position here, he can't really build a very large moyo. And so I've definitely taken the advantage and controlled the game because I have two corners. I have two corners on the top, which equals about like 20 points. So if he has 20 points here, it's basically neutralized. Then I have another corner on the bottom left, and I have Comey. So he has to make more than 20 points on the top with this formation in order to come out ahead. And with this move, he can't really do it. But as I said, I wanted to play very differently. So I decided to build my own area. And I end up doing it a little bit too slowly. When I say slowly, I could have played on the left side. This still builds up my area. And there's a little bit of weakness here for him that I could maybe use in the future. Maybe resurrect my stones, whatever. But my opponent ends up playing just some, like another couple moves where I can easily take advantage here. Because this jump makes it easy for me to push through if he fights this cut too hard. So he has to connect. I get to take a lot of territory. And then he has to really force this into a very big moyo. But I have an opportunity here to very much reduce the moyo with a move like this. If he can only get just this sort of side, this will be good enough for me. I have so many points everywhere. This will be good enough, but I end up pushing cutting instead, which allows him to take this area. I played some slightly bad shape, but that's not too big of a deal. Yeah, this allows him to get that large center, and actually black ends up being a little bit ahead, even though I have come out ahead in the bottom left. This was much better for me. I came out ahead on the top with the corners. I even got this cut, which actually was good for me. Like I got a lot of things that should have been better for me overall, better exchanges for me. But then I played like this jump on the bottom, which was slightly too slow. And instead of reducing his moyo, I played the cut to grab some extra points. And I could have done a little bit better, even with my very early game, jumping out to where this black stone is to prevent him from getting that. So it ends up being a very, very close game where black ends up being just very slightly ahead. I have to try to fight a little bit to reduce him just a little bit extra. And he ends up overplaying as a result, trying to fight back against what I'm doing. Here with this cut. If he just honeys over the top here, it's going to just be a close game. It's going to just be an end game. And I've already had a little bit of a hard time with end game lately, so he might have been able to win, but he ended up going too far, and I was able to outread my opponent here and capture his stones on the right side. And he didn't even really get to break into my area very much here. He tries to fight back a little bit more, but it's just too much for black to handle here. And he resigns. I think overall this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed all of these games, and I think I actually learned quite a lot here. And I'm excited to play in the next season. Who knows what it'll be? Like if I'll be in Division 3. I was in the second division, which was the second from the top here, which was really cool. Maybe I'll be one lower because I lost a lot of my games. I'm excited to play more and see how this league ends up developing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys are having a good day. I'll see you in my next video on Monday, I think. All right, have fun.